Okie dokie, MOT time. And apologies for the road noise in the background. I meant to bring a lapel mic and then I forgot. But I'm going to take this opportunity whilst the car is getting checked over to actually go through the situation with my Starlink, because I've had it for a little while now, and you know, there's some things I'd like to update everybody on in terms of how that's going. Okay, we're going to do the Starlink update a little bit later because the MOT tester would like a little bit of help navigating the menus, which honestly, that happens every year. So no surprise there. And also, I quite enjoyed chatting to somebody about, you know, my car, my lovely car. He almost fell off his seat when he heard it was 168,000 miles on the clock. Checking the suspension. Ah, do you know where the jack points are?
There should be holes either end.
Don't think they're holes.
Plugs.
Don't think there are. There's like, if you look on the, I can't really show you from here, hang on. Right, I'm back. The car passed its MOT, of course. And yeah, great. The only thing I would say, I haven't yet had an MOT in this car where I didn't need to actually help. All of the 5 MOT tests that I've had with my car since its initial sort of 3 years without an MOT, they have told me that, don't worry, we've done tests before, it'll be fine. And every single year I had to be there. In this particular case, it was a good idea because I, you know, almost put the jack points in the wrong place, which wouldn't have been so good. But yeah, it's just generally speaking, I think if you have a tester, it is usually a good idea if you're not leaving it at an actual, you know, specific electric vehicle testing area where they're used to EVs. It's a good idea to hang around and give them a hand. Moving on to Starlink. Generally speaking, I've been very happy with Starlink, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. It is not as fast as I would have hoped, and I think the reason for that is because I've got the mobile roaming version rather than the local version. I think that's what it is. I don't actually need the extra speed. I'm more likely to find it useful to actually be able to take it somewhere else, and it doesn't look like that, like there's an overabundance of people with local versions in anywhere in the UK actually, so I don't feel like I need to sort of grab that slot before they're all gone. So yeah, I mean, run a little speed test, you'll see what I mean. The latency is pretty good. The download speed is perfectly reasonable. It's about the same download as the default broadband that we get in the area here. We don't have fibre to the property, so it's a copper last mile, which obviously limits the speed quite a lot in this village. The upload is maybe actually a little bit better than the default upload that, you know, the normal broadband around here gets, and obviously it costs like twice as much. So, and you've got to get the kit up front, so it is definitely a more expensive option, but it's also a much more flexible option. So we enjoyed our holiday to Wales very much. We found the lake. Look, in the distance there, behind the umbrella. It's amazing. The weather's really good here. I highly recommend you come to Wales for all your holidays. Seriously. I always love coming to Wales. You're guaranteed this sort of weather. Really enjoying this, despite the rain. We did take the Starlink and it worked very well, actually. It was actually more obstructed there than it was here because they had some big trees nearby. It seems like lateral obstructions are the problem more than sort of, you know, horizontal ones, vertical. Do you know what I mean? That seems to be the way it goes. Anyway, it was great. Wales was quite wet. Luckily not all the time, but the weather was not wonderful, but the holiday was, and that's the main thing. Personally, I don't mind supporting technologies that I think are really good and a really good idea, and I think Starlink is one of those. I think the advancements that SpaceX is making, which is powered, at least in part, by Starlink, financially I mean powered, they're great, and they're going to be really pivotal for humanity down the line. So you know, I wouldn't describe it as a pure charity thing. I certainly wouldn't want the service to be any slower than it currently is. Then I would have to think about trying to move on to a local one and not have the roaming. I really don't know. At the moment though, the broadband is perfectly capable of doing TVs, games, all that stuff. The latency is low, my uploads work fine. I've never really felt like there's been any kind of a bandwidth issue whilst using Starlink, which is great, quite honestly. And the uptime has been brilliant. I mean, it's actually feels much more solid and dependable than the broadband delivered down the phone line, which honestly would regularly fall over, especially in the evenings. It would get very congested and you'd end up with a significantly worse service than we actually get with the Starlink. So that's a plus. I mean, I don't think Starlink is really designed for people that can access ordinary broadband most of the time, but insofar as they have extra capacity and people are willing to pay, I think it's a perfectly good and viable option. And at least so far, I do not regret going for Starlink. And of course, there's no minimum contract. So if I want, I can just cancel the mobile one of this, get BT to put a line in, which would save me a little bit. Well, there is a line anyway, they just have to activate it and then send me a router, and they will have a 12-month contract, unfortunately, but I'd be paying half as much a month, and then I can always turn Starlink on again when I need it. But for now, I'm just going to stick with Starlink because, you know, I like the fact that my videos go to space and back before you guys see it, which is pretty cool, I think. Anyway, right, well, that is basically it for today's rather short upload. I hope you've found it interesting. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to know how many people actually use Starlink in the UK. It's difficult to see that information, but looking at the Starlink availability map, doesn't look like there's anywhere in the UK that you can't have a local one if you want it. So I guess it's still in the sort of early adopter phase of things. Right, I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. If you have, remember to leave a like and share it, and follow me on Instagram and X if you like. Links are in the description. I want to say a massive thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome, and I will see you all in the next episode of my vlog. Bye!